Hello, my name is Rebecca Simon. On behalf of Shamiram Media, I welcome our viewers. Our guest today is Dr. Lidia Napiorkowska. She is a scholar in the Assyrian dialect of Diana. She's of Polish descent and was born in Poland. She has her master's degree in Hebrew from University of Warsaw and her Ph.D. and postdoctorate from Cambridge University in England. She worked very closely with not only a friend of this program, but the friend of the Assyrian nation, the one and only Professor Jeffrey Kahn. Dr. Lidia spent some time in Sweden and Atra, Iraq to learn, research, and document the nuances of the Diana dialect. She is currently teaching Hebrew at the University of Warsaw and lives in Poland with her husband and her 3 young children. Dr. Lidia, welcome to our program at Shamiram Media. When I found out that you are in the realm of reality doing what you do, I was extremely excited. But to even speak with somebody like you, a scholar of your magnitude, I am ecstatic. Thank you for accepting our invitation and welcome to Shamiram Media.
Hello, Rebecca. Hello, Assyrian community. Shalom Aleichem. The pleasure is all mine, really, and thank you very much for your kind introduction.
Absolutely. You deserve not only these words, but a lot more. Lidia, did you grow up with any Assyrians in your community or in your family?
No, we are Polish through and through, and actually the first time I encountered any Assyrians was when I was doing my Ph.D. in England. So there are hardly any Assyrians in Poland as far as I know.
And that is why your story is quite interesting. How is it that somebody who got her master's in Hebrew all of a sudden got connected not only with the Assyrian language and studies, but even a smaller section of the Assyrian language, and that is a subset dialect of the Diana language or dialect? How did that come about?
Well, I have to say that I've been interested in the Semitic languages beyond Hebrew, so ancient Aramaic and Syriac as well. And then at some point I learned that Aramaic is still spoken by many people throughout the world, and that the language displays some fantastic linguistic features, and I took the opportunity to research it and learn more about the people and the language itself.
As I understand, when you were doing your postdoctorate program at Cambridge, that there were, I believe, a total of 10 students who were learning Assyrian with Professor Jeffrey Kahn. How many of those 10 students or so that you were working with were of Assyrian descent?
2, I believe. The rest was came from various places around across Europe, actually. 2 of them were Assyrian.
And the rest were, can you give us an idea?
Swiss, Dutch, Czech, Italian, English.
Thank you, Europe, for producing people who have love for our language. That's truly impressive.
Yes, these are the ones that I can
non-Assyrians.
remember.
Sorry?
These are the ones that I can remember.
Yes, of course. Lidia, you spent some time in Sweden and Atra, Iraq. Could you tell us a little bit about your experiences with the Assyrian and what scholarly work you did there, and then spend a little more time about your time that was spent in small villages in Garbia of Iraq, Atra.
Sure. So obviously, entering the Assyrian community is always an amazing experience, whether it's in diaspora or in Atra. So people are always extremely warm, welcoming, happy to help. They always feed you with the amazing food and have patience for asking numerous questions. They're very helpful. Their heart is open wide. So that was my experience both in Sweden and in Atra, Iraq. But working in Iraq has this advantage that Surat really surrounds you, and wherever you go, it's there. In Sweden, you have to find the people. They're not everywhere. Whereas during my time in Diana, wherever I went, I could hear the language. Wherever I went, there were people willing to tell me the stories of their families, of their people, the stories of Diana, different Assyrian customs. So literally, I could never leave my recording equipment behind because it was always handy wherever I went. And as I said, the experience of meeting the Assyrians is the same everywhere you go, but it's just slightly different that the milieu is prompting interviews and is prompting subjects for recordings really when you're there.
Have you found the Diana dialect spoken anywhere else but the village of Diana or the territory of Diana in Atra?
Actually, the Diana variety is itself composed from different like sub varieties. So there are people who come from Azran and speak the Azran Diana variety. There are people from Zariwaw who speak the Zariwaw Diana variety. I've also met people from Harire Batase, from Harir actually, who also live in Diana, and they speak a similar variety. So the Assyrians who come from different villages right now could be found in Diana. They all speak a similar linguistic variety. The speakers of Diana Zariwaw could also be found in London and in Sweden, where I obviously carried my fieldwork.
Why were you interested in this specific dialect?
First of all, because it, at the time when I was researching it, it was an undocumented variety, so it wasn't widely documented. And we all know that many varieties of Surat are very fragile. There are sometimes you meet elderly people who come from a particular village, and they're not always passing the language on to the next generation of speakers. So it's really of utmost importance to record all the varieties that we can in order to create a full linguistic map of the communities speaking Assyrian.
Do you know about how many Assyrian dialects are there in the world? Do scholars know that?
I think the right person to be asked this question would be Professor Jeffrey Kahn. I think in the database that he administers, we have at least 50 varieties of Assyrian, but I bet there's a lot more still to be documented and recorded. So there's still a lot of field work to be done.
How did you manage to document the language, the dialect?
Thanks to the Assyrian community, obviously. Thanks to the people who were willing to share their linguistic heritage with me, answer the questions, tell stories. In practical terms, I have to say that I received training from my postdoctoral funder at the University of SOAS ELDP program, where I learned to use particular types of microphone and how to process audio and video materials. But all this is really technical background. And what's most important is to meet the people who speak the language, be patient about describing the linguistic intricacies that you would like them to talk about, and just be open to what they want to share. So I've recorded a lot of audio and video materials, and then I spent hours and hours listening to this and transcribing it. So trying to write it down in Latin script so that it's easier for everyone to read without those who don't know the Syriac or Assyrian script. And I made some notes about how I believe the grammar of the linguistic variety works. And this is how I sketched my PhD, really.
I always wonder how linguists, people who are scholars in languages and learn new languages, especially a rare one like the Diana dialect of a rare Assyrian language, how they pronounce the various sounds, and how do they know that they got it right, precisely right?
I guess the feedback comes from the community, really. So whenever you try to speak the language, you try to speak the dialect, if people understand what you're saying, that means you're heading in the right direction. Obviously, it's not easy, especially for me, because of my background. For instance, in Polish, we only have 5 vowel qualities, and Assyrian has much more. For instance, the Diana Zariwaw dialect has the U variety, which I had to learn to pronounce. But there are others such as qa or kh, and it takes some time to practice the sounds, and then it's very rewarding once you try to communicate and you can tell that the people are understanding you, or at least are making an effort.
In your experience, you're a scholar. Does the Diana dialect have sounds or vowels that are specific to that dialect? No other language uses it.
No other language, like I don't know all the languages in the world, but I know that there are very rare sounds, such as this or the so-called unaspirated b. But I guess what's very interesting about the Diana variety is that these sounds can occur within one word. So it's uncommon in the languages of the world to have them strung within one word. The example that comes to mind is the word for mountain. Now I'll try my best to pronounce it. And it's طيورة. So you have an unaspirated t and a back r, and in the middle there comes a front vowel such as u. So the co-occurrence of these sounds within one word is indeed rare typologically when you look at other languages of the world.
Very, very, very interesting. Now, how long did you work on, how long did it take you to learn the dialect?
I spent, I guess it took me 3 years of constant work with the recordings, of listening to them every day, almost putting them under my pillow and sleeping on this audio material. My PhD took in total 4 years, and then 2 years of postdoctoral research.
I see. And I presume that the scholarly work is ongoing. Are you still involved in doing the work in one form or another?
Sure. So there are still some recordings. I keep in touch with Professor Jeffrey Kahn. So as you maybe the viewers remember that he administers a database of the Assyrian dialects. So from time to time, I try to contribute to that database, sending in some information about other Assyrian varieties of Assyrian. Recently, that was the dialect of Darmandoke, and also on Chaldean. So there are still some recordings made by researchers that need to be transcribed, that need to be processed and put in some sort of archive so that the audience, the community, may access them.
Interesting. When do you think your work will stop? Do you see an end, or this will never stop to learn and to just discover new things about the language?
I think it may go on forever. This is a language is a world in itself, and when we're talking about the community that perpetuates the language, that speaks it every day, and the language evolves and continues, then the work is also an ongoing process, and it never ends, really.
About how many people do you know that exist in the world, Sweden, Iraq, and other places, who speak this specific dialect?
I'd estimate this community for no more than 20 people of, say, fluent speakers who can actually produce full sentences, don't have the passive knowledge, because obviously a lot of people can understand the variety of Zariwaw, but the active users who can really speak the dialects, that would be a very limited number.
That would be considered an extinct dialect, I think, near extinction.
That's why documentation is so important.
Do any of the 20 people that you know of who speak the dialect, any of them children, or they're all adults?
They're all adults. They do have children, but as I said, it's not always that the language is, the variety is preserved with the younger generation. So sometimes when the speakers move to a different location, then they speak a slightly different variety. So for instance, I know about one family where the mother is of Zariwaw origin, at least part of her family, but they live in Ankawa, and the children already speak a more Ankawa variety than the Zariwaw one. If anyone from the community who's right now watching and would like to say that hey, I'm from Zariwaw. I still speak the dialect. I was born of the parents from Zariwaw. We can get in touch and talk about it. That would be great.
إيمان وايلة أكسدن اتنرابا ناشا ليطي متبصل طاقة شكلي. اتلا نسيانة بدنا كيسس ات injury law. بيالباية قريمخ. إن آتن ينكل بتت بيتا خزموخن يطانة اتلوخن بوقارة مخبرون المنيان التلفون 8 أوروبا شوا وچو 8 تري وچو 5 خا اشتا يعني توكن بيت injuryrights.com. شمي إلى توني كالوغراكس كيام زمن لشان خلية يما.
Dr. Lydia, have you ever had, you're teaching at Warsaw University, teaching Hebrew. Have you considered having any classes in Assyrian to those who learn Hebrew in your classes?
It is my dream because there is interest. Even though I teach Hebrew, I try to tell my students as much as possible about the Assyrian, the dialects of Assyrian, about the Assyrian language, and they do show some interest because not all of them know that the language is still spoken, and if so, then where could the speakers be found? So if one day enough people gather together and are willing to have a class, I'll be delighted to teach it.
That's fantastic. I am so happy that you are trying to build a bridge between your students and the ancient language near extinction. 20 peoples that you know of who speak the language is a sad story about the next generation. It may be down to 0. And the only thing we will have would be your documentation and Professor Jeffrey Kahn's work. I'm going to ask you something. Have you ever considered teaching your kids this language? They can pick it up really fast.
I guess I'm not a good enough speaker to do this, but obviously, as well as my students, I try to interest them in what I do, what my work is about. And they can already say shlama.
That's a
maybe
good
one day
start.
we'll learn some more words. Absolutely.
Dr. Lydia, if you had a megaphone that you could reach the powers that be and those who control funding and agendas and strategies, what would you say to them about the Diana dialect?
I would say it's an example of a beautiful oral heritage that needs to be documented, needs to be archived. This variety as well as many others, and we should make every effort to not to let any drop of the Assyrian language go unnoticed and fall into oblivion. So there should be ample funding, ample research grants for documenting these varieties. And I guess I would also like to say that the language as well as the community deserve a recognition worldwide, because obviously the situation of the Assyrians living in Sutu is not the best. They're a minority, and they should be protected so that no harm comes to them.
What would your response be to those critics who say, you know what? So what? One less language in the world, nobody speaks it anyway, no country has the Diana dialect or the Assyrian language as their official language. You know, if it dies, it dies. So what? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that if we're making efforts to preserve the panda species or any other species in biology, then this could easily be translated to the world of languages. So it is our duty to protect the world around us, and we should make every effort not to let it die out. The way just the same way we protect biological life, we should also protect languages, because after all, they're a medium of human communication, and a medium in which in which human community expresses. They express themselves through this medium. So losing a language is like losing entire oral heritage of a particular community.
Besides you and Professor Jeffrey Kahn, do you know of anyone else who is actively working on this dialect?
On this very dialect, I'm not aware of, but again, if there's anyone out there, do drop me an email.
And you can collaborate.
Absolutely.
Well, Lydia, I cannot believe you're a dream come true. We are indebted to you for the work that you've done that will hopefully not, but it may outlast the spoken language, the work that you are doing, documenting it. And I started speaking English and learning it as an adult, and that's spoken all around me. I cannot imagine the kind of hard work and dedication that it takes to take on a language that's hardly ever, I mean, I am an Assyrian, and I didn't know about this specific dialect. So it takes a certain special person like you to do this. And I cannot thank you enough.
I've had good teachers, good professors, good mentors, and my work would not have been possible without without you, the Assyrians, the Assyrian community. So you can take the credit as well, because as I said, it's the open heart and the willingness to collaborate of the Assyrian community that has made my work possible. So this is, I guess, the opportunity to say a big thank you. Hawetun Basime.
Ledakra atin ivet cha melechta lishanet surai. I don't know if you
Basim
understood my
Tarava.
dialect, but I said you are an angel of the Assyrian, of our language. And thank you so much for your time. I know it's past 10 p.m. in Poland. You have 3 small children who are sleeping. You have to go to work. We really appreciate your time, your dedication. And if there's anything else that Shamiram Media can do to further your studies, please let us know. We'll try and help you in any way we can.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for this interview. And you are doing amazing work, producing materials that underline the importance of the language. And this is, I guess, we work hand in hand in this respect.
Thank you, my dear. Good night to you. Kisses from the US all the way to Warsaw, and hope to talk to you again. Take good care.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.